Hello, 13th jurors, and thank you for reporting to jury duty. Brady Churchwell here, and I am here to get you caught up on a wild few days. Everything you've missed from days 6, 7, and 8 with Letecia Stauch. Now, this is the stepmom murder trial. She is currently on trial for the murder of her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon. So it's been a wild few days. This is everything you missed. So the day starts off with a bang on day 6 as Dakota Lowry, who is Letecia's brother, takes the stand. Now, as soon as he sits down, his voice begins shaking immediately, and before the DA can even get a question in, his emotions just completely take over, and he begins to cry, and he yells out, "Why, Tisha?" Not surprisingly, Letecia shows no emotion. She just sits there, and she even seems to kind of have a smirk on her face. The jury is sent out while he regains his composure, and when they're brought back in, questioning begins. Dakota gives some background about their family growing up in Lumberton, North Carolina, and he tells the jury how he and the family came to Colorado to support Letecia and to help look for Gannon when he went missing. They wanted to support her because they felt like she was being treated unfairly and was being wrongly accused. Now, Dakota said that when they flew in, they rented a car and Letecia wanted to go get her things from the house. So he said that he was really frustrated when they were there because he felt like the police were treating Letecia like a criminal and that they were even looking through her things and treated the family unfairly as well. They loaded everything up, and as they were leaving, Letecia stopped to do that now infamous interview where she talks about herself much more than she talks about Gannon, and then they went to the hotel. Now, Dakota said that once they got back to the hotel, he was wanting to go look for Gannon. That's part of why he was here. He wanted to make himself useful and help out. But Letecia said that she couldn't do that. She needed to go get dog food. He said that she was gone for a really long time by herself. So long, in fact, that he made a note of how it was strange, and he even said something about it to his wife. Now, in what was probably the most heartbreaking, to me, the most heartbreaking part of his testimony, Dakota recalled seeing Letecia struggling with a big green suitcase. He said that it was obviously too heavy for her. He offered to help her with it, and she said no. She said that it was some of her old softball stuff, which is why it was so heavy. But he's crying as he's recalling this information because of course, now we know that it wasn't softball stuff in there, that she was struggling with that heavy suitcase because it held the body of 11-year-old Gannon. Now, while on the stand, Dakota lets the jury know that his dad, Letecia's stepdad, was killed by a car while he was walking down the side of the road. But you'll remember this is the same story that she told her new employer on Monday when she wanted to take the day off. But he said that this didn't happen recently. This was many years ago. It was actually on his 7th birthday, to be exact. He said as far as the abuse goes, he didn't know anything about his dad ever abusing Letecia, but he thinks that his mom would have told him. Now, when he said this, Letecia shook her head back and forth, basically saying, no, she never told you. He did say that his dad had some long-term effects from the war and that he had a drinking problem, and he was known to be violent with their mom. But he also said that he felt like Letecia knew right from wrong. She never spoke in an accent or referred to herself as Maria. He knew that she didn't like her name, but he did not know of her ever referring to herself by any other names. And he said that the attorney had asked Dakota if he thought that Letecia had a mental break, which led to her doing this. And he said that originally he thought that had to be what it was. She had to have snapped, because how else would she have done this? And he said, that's originally what he thought, but he said, but now, no. So the next few witnesses are all related to the rental cars and trucks and all of the surveillance that was done to those rental cars and trucks. So we have Joshua Johnson from Budget Rental Truck, and he goes over the basic agreement. He says that there are people that have come in that he didn't feel comfortable renting to, but he says Letecia was not one of them. She seemed fine. We also have Sergeant Roy Ditzler. He is the one who placed the GPS trackers in the rented Nissan Altima and in the white Ford van. We have Jake, I don't know if I'll say it right, Abinchan, who coordinated the GPS trackers. We have Detective Brian Rogers, who did digital forensics and obtained Harley's phone for the extraction. And we have Robert Soroy from El Paso Sheriff's Office. Now, Robert actually went to the Colorado Springs airport for the surveillance video, and he sees on the surveillance video, he sees Letecia coming in to the rental car counter and talking to them. Now, while he's there at the airport talking to the people at Avis, an employee comes up and says that she just got handed these keys to the car that this woman gave, and then she got into a white Jetta and drove off. Now, it turns out this was Letecia. So Letecia came and brought this car back while he's there looking at the surveillance. But she didn't bring the car back to the rental lot like you're supposed to. Turns out that she left it way on the other side of the parking lot in a short-term rental parking lot where she had to actually go through and get a ticket, and she left it out there. Next on the stand, we have John Wadden from Avis. Now, John lets us know that the way that the Avis fleet works is that they do a GPS ping about once a day. So you're able to keep up with where cars are or trucks are or whatever. And they have GPS on them, but they don't just kind of sit there and watch. So he's explaining all of this and how it works. And we are able to follow along with him as he gives us the locations of where Letecia was in the truck that she rented. Now, she started out going from Colorado. She was pinged in Decatur, Texas on February 2nd until there was another ping early in the morning on February 3rd. We follow her as she's going through Louisiana later on the 3rd, through Alabama later that night. She gets to Ferry Pass, Florida, and she is in Ferry Pass, Florida, which is near the Pensacola area. This is kind of where Gannon's body was found. So she's there from February 4th until about 3:15 a.m. until about 12:10, I think was the last ping that we see her in Ferry Pass, Florida. After that, she goes towards Orlando area. She's in Lake Buena Vista from 2:05 right around midnight until the next day, 2:06, where she is traveling back north and ends up in South Carolina on February 6th. Now, we find out that the car or truck that she had rented stayed in South Carolina. It was returned here. It stayed there. It was in various locations around there, and it eventually ended up in Rhode Island. So when the warrants came for everything to be searched, by this time the truck had ended up in Rhode Island. So John Grassel, who is the senior manager at Research Triangle Company, he's actually retired from state police, but he was working for Rhode Island State Police at the time. So he's the one who did the analysis on the truck when she turned it back in. He said that they found a calling card. There was also a color change from the Blue Star in the rear of the cargo that was reacting to iron or blood. There was visible blood on the floor mat, and basically he kind of went over the signs that there was trouble in this rental van or truck. On cross-examination, they asked, do you know how many people rented it in South Carolina when, after she dropped it off and between then when it got to Rhode Island? And they said no. Again, this is kind of one of those questions where her defense attorneys seem to be asking things that don't really matter, but that's all they really had on cross. Next up is Sergeant Rosario Hubble. Now, this one was really sad. It was really hard to watch. He did a search in Gannon's room on February 3rd, and he found blood that had soaked down under the carpet by the wall. They showed the video of the house, and they were explaining the Blue Star presumptive testing of blood that was done. So basically, the video goes through and shows kind of where the blood was and where the testing showed everything. Some of it was more substantial than others. Some of it was droplets. But basically there was blood, a good bit of it on Gannon's bedroom wall. There was some on the garage floor and on the boards that were laying on the garage floor. There was some on the laundry room tile. There was actually still blood on the door handle that goes from the door out to the garage. There was blood droplets in the living and kitchen area. The saddest part of everything, though, is that there was a trail of blood that went from Gannon's room out into his little hallway and then into the back corner of the storage room. So next up is Amanda Van Nest. Now, she is the forensic nurse examiner. She normally sees patients who are exposed to violence. So she was the one who spoke to Letecia and did her exam. She said that Letecia came in by ambulance. She was reporting chest pain and sexual assault. The EMS reported to her that she had told them about the chest pain and the sexual assault. They said that she didn't speak much about the assault, though, and she would speak with them when police weren't around. But when police were there, they said that she kind of faked sleeping. She signed her HIPAA forms, no confusion about anything like that. So she seemed like she was not what would be reported as behaving oddly or insane. The majority of the time was one-on-one with no detectives around. She did tell the nurse that she was sexually assaulted by a construction worker named Eduardo, who then kidnapped her son. The nurse said that she told her about the process, the medication to prevent pregnancy, the STD checks, and all of that stuff, and that Letecia was okay with moving forward with everything. She did tell the nurse that she had generalized anxiety disorder, and the nurse said that that's basically just kind of a excessive, unrealistic worry that takes over daily tasks. She told her about the medication that she was on. She said that she was on lorazepam, and then she also said she was on Vyvanse. The nurse said that she was told law enforcement had search warrants that they were going to be collecting. She did a suspect exam and a sane exam. Now, the suspect exam is not voluntary. That's what she had to do because of the warrants. So Letecia signed off on the exams. They completed the suspect exam, and she said that Letecia told her that Harley was in the waiting room and that Harley was a good support for her. So she wanted to go get her to come in and be with her for the second exam. So she left the room to go get her, and I guess she didn't come back for it. She said that she also noticed that Letecia told her she had cleaned up and showered, but the nurse said that her hair was still greasy, so she didn't look like she had cleaned up and showered. She also said that she was fighting back and that he started taking off her pants, that her head hit the concrete, and she could tell that she basically had to give up. Now, the picture that the nurse showed, she showed some pictures that they'd taken of Letecia after the assault, and the pictures basically don't really show anything that goes along with Letecia's story, but there are some marks under her knuckles. It kind of looks almost like maybe the sharp object she used for the stabbing could have been scissors, and because it was kind of in that same spot right there where scissors would be digging into you if you're using those. But there were none of the other marks that Letecia was talking about from her assault. So day 7 is all about Detective Jessica Bethel. She was the lead investigator on Gannon's disappearance, which of course later became a homicide investigation. She takes a stand and she kind of gives some background information about everything. She tells the jury that Letecia was very reluctant to answer questions or to talk to her. She did not make things easier on her. She said that Letecia wouldn't let her come to the house to even interview or ask questions. So that's why they did the Starbucks interview. Of course, we've all heard the Starbucks interview by now. She also talks about how when she tried to talk to Letecia, she tried to get her to come in at some point later on after the Starbucks interview later in the day, and she basically just ignored her. Then when she talked to Al and she kind of found out that there were some concerns of his and she had lied about the rental car and all of that stuff, then of course, obviously that's going to bring up more questions. So then she wants to talk to her. So she said she talked to finally got in touch with Letecia later in the day, and they had a FaceTime interview. Now, Detective Bethel is asking her, do you have any more information on Gannon? We just want to find Gannon. Is there any more information? And Letecia, they played the audio of this, and she gets really aggravated. She says, you just keep asking me things over and over and over. And she said she doesn't have anything new. She's, upset. And she even told the detective that she knows that they're trying to set her up. And she knows that apparently because somebody that she knows on the inside has told her that. It's interesting to listen to her. And it's obviously not how you would expect somebody to behave if they were actually genuinely concerned about their missing child. Now, they show the video of Letecia in the police department giving yet another long, rambling story. And I am not going to go into all these details because these are parts of the details that we've heard in some of the other stories. And honestly, listening to her over-explain everything for hours is just miserable. So I will give you a very condensed version. Basically, this is the first time that she starts to go into the whole story about Eduardo. She tells them about the version of the story where she gives the garage code to somebody who turns out to be this Eduardo guy who was going to come in and fix the carpet. She goes into all of her yada, 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 all of her over-explaining about the different errands she was running and the different things she was doing. She has a couple moments where it's very telling the way that she words things, because it's never about Gannon. It's always about what they're going to think about her, or I don't want you to think that I'm missing something or leaving something out, or I don't want you to hold me to explaining something this way because that's not fair to me. Every single thing involved in her assisting the police is never about actually assisting them or about Gannon. It is always, always about her. It's infuriating to watch. So she goes on and on and on during this video. This is the first time she tells them about the alleged sexual assault. This is the first time she tells them that she lied to police when they showed up for the runaway, which was originally supposed to be the runaway call. This is the first time she tells them that she went downstairs and there was this Eduardo guy in the storage room, and she's got hit on the head with the table and blacked out and things are fuzzy. So that whole version of events, this is the first time that they've heard anything about this. Now, I can just picture them in the, police station hearing this for the first time, and obviously red flags flying everywhere, alarm bells going off. So they start to work on getting a warrant. Now, after hours of sitting here answering questions and not making any sense and lying and talking about all the lies, she starts to get ready to leave. And at this point, they're trying to get the warrant, so they're not allowing her to leave. And she starts to panic. You can tell that she's getting very anxious. She wants to just get out of there. They won't let her leave. They actually detain her. Now, she's not under arrest yet, but they are detaining her. They're not allowing her to leave. One of the officers even takes her phone, just takes out of her hand. That made her very unhappy. She said it was not constitutional, that it was disrespectful. She's basically kind of on a tirade about that. When she's trying to leave, she's gathering up even like her cup and her, hot pocket and everything that had her possible DNA on it. She's trying to take that with her. So she's wanting to take everything she has in there and just get out, and they won't let her. So she goes and sits back down, and day 7 ends while this video is still going on. So day 8 begins how day 7 ended, with Letecia being detained on the video. Now, we watch as she's in the room alone and she digs through her stuff. It looks like she takes a couple of pills from her purse and takes them. She says out loud while she's in the room by herself that she just peed a little and that now she's wet. She asks if she can go to sleep, and then she lays down. She asks for something to read. She tells them that she can't breathe and that she's having chest pains, and she tells them that they have to keep the door open because she can't breathe. Now, at this point, the officer gets frustrated and tells her to go sit down because she is being detained, which is why the door is shut. They tell her that they will get her medical attention, but the whole situation escalates because they're just not buying her crap. So EMT gets there, they check her vitals, and big surprise, nothing's wrong with her, but they still have her walk out to the ambulance, and the video ends as she's walking out there so that they can take her to Memorial Hospital. Now, Detective Bethel gets back on the stand to answer a couple of questions about this, and then we are introduced to the next video, which is a doozy. Now, Letecia was arrested in South Carolina, and there was a transport from South Carolina to get her back to Colorado. So on the way, she somehow slips out of her handcuffs and has a Monster Energy drink in her hand, and she leans over and just clocks her right in the head, where they then have to come forward and try to detain her. She even opens the door and she tries to tell them that she wasn't escaping, she just couldn't breathe. She blames the attack on the detective, saying that she had been rude to her the whole time and she shouldn't have been talking to her that way. This is the first that I had heard of this. I had heard that there was an alleged jailbreak attempt with a broomstick, but we haven't got to any of that yet. So this was a shock to see, but quite a video. So Detective Bethel came back up and answered a couple of questions about this as well. So next up we have Christian Lewer. Now he is an expert in crime scene investigations. We've been over the location of the blood that was found in the house, and Mr. Lewer basically came and showed us the pictures of where those areas are, showed us the illumination from the blood test and the presumptive blood test and the blue star. And he also went over some of the evidence that was collected, like the firearm and the magazine, and pictures taken of the cabinets under the kitchen sink with the cleaning products and things like that. All right, we're down to the end of the day. Now, we have analyst Stephanie Happ, who comes out, and she goes over all of the projectiles. So it's the testing of the bullets and the firearms, how she was able to determine that the bullets were fired from the same Smith & Wesson pistol recovered at the home. This turns out to be a little bit of an issue with a juror who we find out at the end of the day turns out she knows Miss Happ. She didn't realize this until she actually saw her on the stand, but she said about 3 years ago, Miss Happ's mother-in-law went to her church, and she had a couple of encounters with her through that. Now, she said she's still able to remain impartial. Prosecution was okay with keeping her, but defense wanted her removed. So the judge said he would think about that over the weekend, and we would get an answer at the beginning of day 9. The final witness of the day is crime scene investigator Brooke Bell. She didn't finish her testimony, so she'll be back on day 9 also, but she did get it started. Basically, she's kind of like everything CSI. So all of the blood evidence and all of the things that have been collected, she goes into detail about everything that was done as part of the crime scene investigation at the home. So she will be back in on Monday morning as well. Now, at the end of the day, aside from taking care of the juror issue, I'm sure you've probably seen it or heard it by now if you've been on social media at all, but the judge, it is brought to his attention that Letecia is flipping the bird to witnesses and to possibly to Gannon's family throughout the afternoon. Now, he tells her basically, I will have you removed. He said, I can send you to a holding cell and you'll sit there while the trial goes on, without you. So, he got on to her and told her not to do it anymore. When court was over and everybody was being released, she didn't seem like it bothered her too bad because it looked like she was kind of laughing. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see how her behavior changes on day 9, or if it changes on day 9. But that does it for days 6, 7, and 8. So that does it for days 6, 7, and 8 of the Letecia Stauch evil stepmother trial, who is currently on trial for the murder of her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon. Now, next week is expected to be explosive testimony from her daughter, Harley. And we also expect to hear from a few more of the experts at the crime scene. So definitely want to catch up with us for those. And also, if you are following the Lori Vallow trial, you can join us for a 13th Juror live stream. In the evenings, we are listening to the audio that is being released during the day and listening to it together, live chatting. So make sure you join for that too. That's also on my YouTube. So thank you for reporting to jury duty, and I will see y'all next time.